On this episode of the Press Rewind Prince Lyrics Podcast, I want you to free your mind and escape. Escape with me and Richard Cole. Welcome back to the show, Richard.
Welcome to I Am, Jason. Thanks for having me back.
You're welcome, man. I love having you on. Another Prince head to talk Prince lyrics with, and you've got your own podcast. Obviously, we have very different formats with our shows. Your show, the Amari Purple Talk, you kind of just talk about what's going on in the Prince world and with his various associates. Like your latest episode on the Morris Day and the Time drama, that was a very insightful episode. But then I've got like a completely different vibe where I'm just talking about a single Prince song per episode, really getting down to the details, so to speak. And today we're going to be talking about Escape. Escape is the B-side to Lovesexy's second single, Glam Slam, and it was really the first new B-side from this era, because Alphabet Street, the first single released from Lovesexy, didn't have like its own separate B-side, because basically the B-side of the 7-inch was just second half of the song, because the song was fairly long with Cat's rap and everything that goes on in the second half of the song. So that's what we got as the B-side, was just basically the full song of Alphabet Street. So Escape, the song we're doing today, was really the first new track that we got from Lovesexy from the singles released. We were talking a little bit before I hit record about your history with the song, Richard. So sounds like you got the song when it was first released, back in '88 or whatever, but hadn't really spent a lot of time listening to it since then. Is that true?
Yeah. I was living in San Francisco. I was going to art school out there. Been there for like probably a couple of years when the Lovesexy tour came to town. And I had a friend here in St. Louis, co-songwriter, bandmate. He flew out to check it because it was the Lovesexy tour never made it to St. Louis, but it was there in San Francisco and Oakland, where I was staying then. And he bought the 12-inch single to Glam Slam, and he made me a cassette copy of both that side and the B-side, which was Escape. Yeah, I haven't heard that pretty much since then. The shorter version, when I bought the hits and the B-sides, so we're talking, 93 or so. Yeah, I haven't listened to it since then until... just the time up until we're recording this episode. Initial thoughts, I don't know. This was kind of, I think, maybe the beginning of where this one was more of a throwaway B-side than some of the other, classic B-sides.
Mm-hmm.
And I think even more so than the last one that we discussed, La La La, He. To me, I mean, just kind of going off my thoughts of it, listening to it now and years ago. Because after that there was I don't know if we can curse on the show or not, but the
Absolutely.
Other B-side, the other B-side, Scarlet, we'll say Scarlet P.
I'm eventually going to do that song, and I'm not going to tiptoe around the title, so
gotcha.
You can say
Okay.
Scarlet Pussy.
Cool. Okay. All right. Cool. So Scarlet Pussy, the one after that one, I think was kind of a return to form to some of the classic B-sides. So this one for me was kind of, Escape was kind of, I don't know, like I said, it felt more of a throwaway, but then with Prince's throwaways, there's still always something interesting in it, and probably better than a lot of other artists' B-sides or throwaways as well.
Yeah,
on that.
yeah.
And I've got some ideas of where this could have gone. We'll probably get to that a little bit later, but that's just my initial memories.
Oh, cool. I mean, I hope we do get to it at some point, because My thoughts are pretty much mirroring yours in terms of like I wouldn't say the quality, but just the impact of this song. It's pretty slight, in my opinion. It doesn't feel like a song that Prince spent a whole ton of time on. I mean, honestly, I have no idea how much time he spent on writing and recording the song, but it just feels a little bit like it was an afterthought. Like, oh, I kind of dig, the ideas that I put into Glam Slam, and let me just kind of reuse that chorus a little bit, reuse the title. He even reuses a little bit of the music in the song. I mean, not very much, but a little bit, just a little bit. And so a lot of the themes in Escape are repeats from the album track Glam Slam, which I guess, okay, this was the B-side to Glam Slam, so in some ways it just feels like a continuation. Like, hey, you dig Glam Slam, you bought the 7-inch, right? I mean,
right.
So if you dig it, flip it over, and you basically have Glam Slam Part 2. And that's kind of what Escape comes off as. And it doesn't get brought up, often when people talk about Prince's classic B-sides. It just doesn't. It gets pretty much buried underneath the weight of all of the Purple Rain, Around the World in a Day, 1999, even Sign of the Times era B-sides. Parade didn't have as many classic B-sides. I mean, we did Love or Money, and that's a memorable one, but shit, that didn't even make the hits and B-sides collection. This one did. And maybe that's more to do with its association with a film versus this one, which doesn't. But that's neither here nor there. I think we agree. Escape is a fine song. It's just not one that I think holds a lot of weight in Prince's catalog overall.
Yeah, and what you were saying too about how it's a continuation of Glam Slam. Yeah, definitely in the hook or the choruses. But then lyrically, he's saying quite a bit, which we'll get into later. But I thought, listening to it recently, that here you have, like I said, a B-side, which feels more like a throwaway than anything else in, his official B-side releases. And then it's a B-side to a track that, I don't know, it's almost, I wouldn't say divisive, but again, Glam Slam doesn't usually come up in the conversation, when you talk about a lot of Prince classics. And if the name Glam Slam comes up, it's more in relationship to the clubs that he built later, as opposed to the song for it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
So it has this kind of weird place in the history of that album, where I'm listening to it recently. I thought it'd been a good idea if there was somehow a way to do a mashup, and, still call it Glam Slam, kind of keep the heavy lyrics and have that be a part of Love Sexy. Because I think it's kind of, if he recorded it during the same time as Love Sexy, and obviously it was the reason why it didn't make the final cut for the album with it. But like you said, if he was able to spend more time working either on the album or working on that particular song, I think it would have given more strength to Love Sexy as an album.
Yeah, I think this was recorded, according to Prince Vault, this was recorded, I think, in like May of '88, around the same time the album was released. So this wasn't even like an option really to put on the record. It was, again, I think Prince was thinking, I need something, or I don't know. I mean, maybe he had an idea. Maybe he felt like Glam Slam was cool, but he wanted to continue on with that idea. At this point, I'm sure they're looking like, okay, what's single number 2? Alphabet Street was already out and was released as the lead single. Record label was like, okay, Prince, what are we gonna release next? What are we gonna throw on the B-side? And because I think, and I'm just spouting off here, I really have no basis for this, but he had a very short amount of time that he was recording for Love Sexy, right? So like he knocked this one out in a couple months, which is pretty quick. Right. And I don't know if he had I mean, of course he had a vault worth of material, but I don't think he had a lot of like stuff that he was recording for Lovesexy that didn't make the album. Unlike other albums in the past where he had, 50, 75 different songs to choose from and he could pick the best 10, 12 or whatever.
Right.
I'm not sure that he had as many options for unreleased B-sides in 1988 that he had in the past. Sure, could he have reached back a couple years? Absolutely. He had plenty of songs still in the vault that he had never released. We're hearing them today, and there's plenty that still haven't been officially released. But no one, like, reading about how Prince operated, a lot of times, like, Lovesexy was his newest idea. It was his latest, it was his baby. He didn't really want, I don't think he wanted to reach back into the Revolution era because, then brings up the whole idea of stuff that maybe had contributions from other band members that were now ex-band members, or even if it was his own stuff that he didn't have the Revolution participate in that's sitting in the vault. Maybe it was tied to some, memory that he didn't really want to revisit, or a recent breakup, or who knows. Just like, I think he recorded this as a B-side for Glam Slam because he just needed another song, needed a B-side. And I could be completely off, but that's just one theory.
Yeah, I could see that as being a possibility. Yeah, I didn't know it was done so late.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I feel like as being a continuation to the song Glam Slam, being like a part 2 or, Glam Slam continued, it makes sense that it was written later, I think, because at this point, Glam Slam was probably being earmarked for a single, either by him or by the record company, whomever. And so, like, what would make sense for a B-side to Glam Slam? How about another song in a similar vein? How about a song where I repeat the line, Glam Slam?
Yeah.
How about a song where, I even incorporate little bits of the music from, the A side? So that might have been the situation with this B-side in particular. All right, so the song starts off with an intro. So, you've got that drum beat in the background, doom, this pumping, doom, 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 doom. Snare drum pounds on the 2 and 4. All the party people get on the floor. Then he repeats the line. All the party people get on the floor. Bass. And then we get right into the chorus too. Like he has that little intro that I just recited, and then he goes right into the chorus. Glam Slam. Escape. Glam Slam. Free your mind from this rat race. And that's actually the in parentheses subtitle of the song, the 12-inch version. Free your mind from this rat race. Glam Slam. Escape. And it's kind of like I'm trying to emphasize escape because it's like being kind of shouted, at this point in the chorus. Escape. So those are the first words we hear for the song. So the intro, I'm sure you'll note as well when you listen to it, it's nearly identical to an unreleased song at the time, Rebirth of the Flesh.
Right.
Yeah. So do you want to touch in on that a little bit, Richard?
Okay. So, yeah, that was one of my favorite bootlegs until I'm glad it's finally got the official release to it. So, with, I guess, Prince always kind of being in forward thinking mode, we're starting to see like a pattern with a lot of the vault tracks now, where ideas from one track kind of inform either direction for the next album, or it informs a direction for not even sometimes one, but 2 or 3 different songs. And it'll have that sort of common DNA, but then they'll end up so radically different from one another. But when you go dive back into the vault, then you see, oh, okay, so he pulled this bass line from here, or he pulled this, vocal riff from this one, or this horn line from that one. And I guess it was just like you said, where possibly he wasn't going to release Rebirth of the Flesh anytime soon, but apparently it was something that he liked in that track that he was going to use an element of it for Escape.
Because Rebirth of the Flesh, for those who might be listening and not aware, was intended to be on the Camille record. That was going to get a release like in late 86, I think.
Right.
And then Camille got scrapped. Tracks from the Camille record were pulled into Sign of the Times, or used for B-sides, or used for the Black Album, or unreleased. And after the release of, I believe it was the Crystal Ball Project in the 90s, we had received in some form or fashion every track that would have been on Camille except for Rebirth of the Flesh.
Right. Yeah, that was the one holdout.
That was the one holdout. It's a great song too. And in Rebirth of the Flesh, which is like I said, a Camille track, so it's sung by his alter ego Camille. He says, kick drum pounds on the 2 and 4. All the party people get on the floor. So that's the common phrase. So the difference is just replacing kick drum with snare drum. So in Escape, he says snare drum. I mean, the difference between a kick drum and a snare drum, the one is you use your foot pedal to pound on. It's kick drum. And the snare drum, you use your arm and a drumstick. Like it's one of the main drums. Like the kick drum is more of like the bass drum. So I don't know if there's any significance between why he chose to replace kick drum with snare drum. I don't honestly know or think that there is. But maybe, I don't know. Maybe there's some hidden meaning into why he made that switch. Because at this point, it's not like he was jacking something that he had already released, because as far as 1988 audiences were concerned, this was never heard before, unless you were really in the know and you somehow had a less than 2-year-old bootleg of Rebirth of the Flesh or some promo copy of Camille or something that you'd heard. This was not a phrase that people were familiar with. They couldn't recite this. They didn't know it came from Rebirth of the Flesh. So anyway, that's the main difference. Just wanted to point that out. I don't know if you have any thoughts on the difference between kick and snare drum, Richard.
I don't know. I don't know if it was conscious or unconscious
of
it.
Good point.
Where, he was remembering Rebirth of the Flesh and said snare, and then realized later, like, oh no, I meant to say kick. But hey, this sounds great. I'm not going back to fix it.
Usually it's the more simple answer is the correct one, and you're probably on point with that one. It's like, yeah, I recorded that 1.5 years ago. I got close, right? You got it close. Good enough.
Which, off topic for a quick second, I was watching some interview with some engineers, and they mentioned that they worked on Morris Day's Color Success album, and they were telling the story how, like, basically the album was finished and there was one song that was, perfect. I think it might have been Love Sign. I can't remember which one. But Morris calls, says, hey, I'm booking the studio, for however many hours, that he wanted to book the studio for. And they say he comes in to the studio. Everything's set up. Everything's mic'd. Everything's ready to go. He comes in and he just goes, and leaves. Like he just needed to add that one part, and that was it. So, just that with the snare and the kick just reminded me of that.
Yeah, that's.
I think Prince was just like, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to replace it. Just leave it as kick. The song still.
Yeah, right. I mean, functionally speaking, it makes no difference. I mean, it's all part of the drum. Whether the kick drum is pounding on the 2 and 4 or the snare drum is pounding on the 2 and 4, the idea that you get, the visual you get is, the start of the beat, the boom, 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 boom. You can make that sound with a kick drum or a snare drum. So
right,
doesn't make much difference. As far as the chorus goes, like free your mind from this rat race, just that line in the chorus, because otherwise the chorus is really simple. It's just glam, slam, escape, repeated with the free your mind from this rat race. And also I did want to call out, because I like to give shout outs to band members that are, especially when you hear them in the vocals. I believe we have Sheila and Bonnie on here. I mean, definitely you hear Bonnie later.
Yeah.
I believe we've got Sheila on here as well. But they participate in joining Prince in this chorus for sure. I like the free your mind from this rat race line just because it kind of gives you, the listener, idea of like, what are you meant to be escaping from? Like the song is called Escape, so you can escape from a lot of different things in life. So, okay, so Prince is trying to give you an idea of escaping from, I don't know, negativity or stress or whatever it is that is bogging you down and making you feel like you're kind of a rat in a cage, so to speak. What do you get from the chorus, Richard?
Yeah, so that, I guess, we'll get into the actual lyrics, but I think that's the escape. Everything that's going on lyrically in that is a very good reflection of pretty much what was going on by 1988. I know we're kind of in a crazy, time period now, but even back then, there was a lot that was going on. You had the AIDS crisis going on still, crack, which is alluded to later in the song. That was the beginning of it becoming more of an epidemic. Mm-hmm. And I guess, I don't know, whatever, economics and just a lot of stuff that was still going on in 88. I think war was on the horizon too, within a couple of years. So
yeah, Gulf War. Yep.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely. Even back then, there was still a lot, where Prince, I guess, is alluding to, hey, you can escape, but let's try to escape in a more positive way.
Yeah.
Which,
yeah, right.
Yeah. Using using Glam Slam as the hook, that sort of psychedelic, spiritual positivity, was, right. I guess it was kind of to say, this is the door, the door to Glam Slam, so if you want to escape, here's a positive place you can escape to.
Yeah, exactly. Because Glam Slam, the way I understood it and how we kind of described it in that episode, is it's like a frame of mind, like a mental state, a way of life, like just anything that you can attribute it to, because it wasn't a physical place yet. I mean, it's a little bit like Paisley Park, right? I mean, the song Paisley Park is in your heart. Oh, then it became a physical location later. Right. Glam Slam was just an idea, a concept in 87, 88. Then it became a physical place later. But it wasn't a nightclub yet in 1988. So right. The words Glam Slam and then how that song and this song used them leads the listener to believe he's talking about, positivity and a frame of mind and being able to take some of the troubles off of your shoulders and think of better ways to celebrate life and get rid of some of the stresses instead. All right, so the first verse, that first actual verse, we don't have a lot of verses in this song, but the first one, and this song, it kind of makes me chuckle because I don't know how to describe them. To me, they sound like cartoon sound effects.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? Like, you have that cartoony sound effect. I don't know if that was just like some sound effect he had on his drum machine, if he was using the Fairlight or whatever he was using at the time.
Yeah, I don't know where it came from. Yeah, he could have sampled it too. I can't think of the actual instrument that makes that noise.
Yeah.
But yeah, they use it in all the cartoons, I think.
Yeah, it just comes across to me as a cartoony. But anyway, so the lines are, 15 minutes ain't long enough. to be out your mind in a world so tough. If you want to escape and truly be, all the crack in Compton won't set you free. Come on. All right, so this first verse, to me, it's fairly straightforward. The only question I had, like when I was reading these lyrics and listening to the song, when he's saying 15 minutes ain't long enough, I have a theory what I think he's referring to, but I guess it could be a couple things. So what do you think he's referring to here when he's talking about 15 minutes ain't long enough? And then to follow that up with to be out your mind in a world so tough.
I guess, given not only crack, but I mean, just about any drug. I don't know how long a high would last, in terms of whatever minutes or hours. I know the thing that was so dangerous about crack was that how instantly addictive it was compared to other drugs, which is why it caused so much, devastation in, more so the Black community than anywhere else, just because it was instantly addictive. But yeah, any high, whether it's crack, whether it's heroin, whether it's, even say, marijuana or whatever, alcohol, you do have that sort of, I guess, that buzz. Mm-hmm. And I guess, maybe for, at minimum 15 minutes, you're kind of in another place, you're kind of outside of yourself. But all the consequences that come from that sort of instant gratification, it's, you can't live your life on that.
Yeah, it's not sustainable.
Right.
Yeah, that's basically what I took from it too. That was, and just using context clues, because this whole verse talks about, 15 minutes ain't long enough to be out your mind. So, in other words, being kind of in another place mentally. If you want to escape and truly be, and then referencing crack and Compton. So all the context clues one could use to assume that he's talking about in that first line, 15 minutes ain't long enough. The 15 minutes being like the length of a typical high, or the peak of the high, however you want to describe it. That's kind of the way I thought of it as well, based off of what I heard in that first verse. So we're on the same page there.
Yeah. And too, at that time, Compton was practically, it was the epicenter. And by 88, it was starting to spread, across the country.
Yeah, Compton by 1988 was starting to really become more, get more national exposure, I think, in the news for gang violence, like you said, like epicenter for gang violence, drug violence. There's a reason why NWA came out with Straight Outta Compton, because their whole aesthetic was, we're coming from a dangerous place.
Right. And, that, where they came from, I mean, that had been going on in LA since the 70s. It's just that with the introduction of crack, like I said, it just kind of became this like flashpoint for everything that's unfolded in the decades since. I remember, like, I moved to California in 87, and, just turning on the news, and then you would see all, hear all in the news about the drive-bys and all this stuff that was going on, and newspapers were doing these special reports on the differences between, the gangs in LA versus Oakland versus San Francisco versus, say, Chicago, and all of that. And, here, we'd never known anything like that. Usually, here, a gang was just somebody, the worst that they would carry would probably be knives. Maybe somebody would have a gun, but it was just, either just troublemakers or, robbery, or if you were selling drugs, you were pretty much doing it independently at that point. But I always, make the analogy for St. Louis, where in '84, when Purple Rain came out, everybody ran out and got a band the next day. And then when Colors came out, everybody ran out and got a gang the next day.
You're talking about the movie Colors?
Yeah.
Robert Duvall, Sean Penn, Ice-T on
Penn.
the soundtrack. Yeah.
Right. And it
Everybody
wasn't
got
until
themselves a gang.
yeah, and I mean, but it wasn't until the '90s, when I guess you can say because territories were expanding for one reason or another, that now everything kind of became more uniform. To where just like Ice Cube song, My Summer Vacation.
I was just thinking about that song, Richard.
And
because they moved to that song takes place in St. Louis, right? So,
yeah.
The gang.
Yeah, and by '92, by 91, 92, it was bad. It was really bad.
Drive by in Missouri.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, like I said, '88, that wasn't going on.
Right.
I mean, you still had to watch yourself at night, but still, it wasn't like you didn't have to worry about that. Pretty much, you know? Like I said, the worst thing
the crack epidemic really amped things up. I think in terms of gangs, gang violence, and just the dangerous inner city danger, and that's where like Prince is kind of talking about here with all the crack in Compton won't set you free. It's not like crack wasn't being sold anywhere else. But just because Compton was in the news, Compton was at the forefront of a lot of people's consciousness. It was starting to gain traction in terms of national exposure, where maybe it was just more local exposure. And people know, you say Compton in 1988, and you're immediately given or provided like some context of what he's referring to, whether it's right or not. Whether you've never stepped foot in the state of California, you hear the word Compton, you hear the city of Compton being referenced, you get an idea of where he's going. All right. Any other comments on this first verse before we move on?
Nah. Move on to the second verse.
Yes, because the chorus is exactly the same as what we've already talked about. Glam Slam. He says slamming, so you hear him say slamming, so he's still kind of pulling out the slamming like he did. You Got the Look.
Yeah.
Slamming. Free your mind from this rat race. Glam Slam. Escape. Verse 2. You got to be yourself. You got to be aware. Because the gangster man, he don't give a care. Whether you live or whether you die. Glam Slam Escape. Got to give it a try. Okay, so this is really seemingly just a continuation of stuff he's been talking about in the first verse, referencing the gangster man. Well, again, gang violence coming out of Compton was a thing. The line, you got to be yourself, you got to be aware, I think really kind of appeals to, or this whole verse seems to be appealing to individuals that maybe are living that lifestyle, like maybe living that, or living the lifestyle of a gangster, or living in a dangerous location, maybe ripe for being recruited into a gang, and he's maybe trying to appeal to these people that are still on the fence or whose destiny hasn't really been decided yet.
Mm-hmm.
Don't do it. Like, whether you live or whether you die, these people don't care. They don't really care about you, is I think what he's trying to say. Gangster man don't give a care whether you live or whether you die. So you gotta he's strongly recommending giving something else a try, and that's where he's saying Glam Slam Escape, got to give it a try. So anyway, what are your thoughts on the second verse, Richard?
As I'm thinking about it, of course, we alluded to how the world or communities were changing based on the first verse, but also in relationship of the art, either trying to inform people of what was happening or art imitating life. Yeah, again, by 88, I mean, granted, you had Public Enemy, you still had Rakim, you had KRS-One, there was still a balance in hip hop, but here, you know, NWA kind of kicked, well, Ice-T the beginning, and then NWA later had kicked open that door to say, hey, this is a whole nother world that's going on. And I think, you know, it definitely had influence. Mm-hmm. It had a lot of influence. So not only with, you know, the element that was already in place, but of, you know, kind of the impressionable minds that felt like, oh, well, you know, I'm not going to make it anywhere else, so I'm going to try to make it here on the streets, and this is the only way I can do it. And I think, you know, Prince, I think he was aware of it, of what was happening. You know, not only, like I said, the shifts in the communities, but also within the music industry, because, yeah, the whole thing was sort of, you know, gaining a huge momentum starting in '88. And, you know, we see where with the Black Album, where Prince was talking about, you know, Dead on It, where he kind of had this sort of anti-hip hop mentality, to see, you know, here it is the month of, he said he recorded this in May. You know, by then, the Love Sexy album is slowly, you know, or rapidly dipping down the charts. But here you have, I have to look to see what was going on that month, but definitely I'm sure NWA was still at the top of the charts with virtually no radio play. Mm-hmm. And going platinum, or even probably maybe double platinum. I think it was Hammer the first. But either way, you know, the MTV, BET, all the hip hop videos were in heavy rotation. And here, you know, Prince is, you know, with a very strong album, doesn't go to number one. I think Alphabet Street barely made top 10.
Yeah, the tides were definitely turning around this time. 1988 was the year that Yo MTV Raps debuted.
Yeah, see, there we go.
So, yeah, so this is the time when rap music was going to really reach mainstream audiences in a way that it hadn't before. Like, nobody's saying, I'm definitely not saying, like, rap wasn't popular until 1988. No. I'm saying rap was able to reach people, audiences, wider audiences than it ever could before, because, you know, cable packages in the late 80s, depending on where you live, you either did or didn't have access to, you know, stations like BET or The Box, or I don't even know if that existed in the late 80s or not, but these were not options. So I was starting to get into rap right before MTV picked up or started airing episodes of Yo MTV Raps. And that was only because of, like, the crossover success of Run DMC, Raising Hell album, the crossover success of the Beastie Boys, the crossover success of LL Cool J with I Need Love and Bigger and Deffer. And then, you know, the occasional inclusion of a rap song on a motion picture soundtrack, you know, something like that. It was because of Yo MTV Raps that I heard of NWA, because these guys were like, and I keep citing them, but, you know, you got Ice-T and a whole bunch of West Coast rappers around this time. They were just not reaching. They weren't getting radio play. I mean, let's just be honest. They're not going to get radio play. They weren't making radio friendly songs by design, for the most part. And they certainly weren't going to get played on, you know, pop stations that I had access to. So it took a TV program like Yo MTV Raps to expose a lot of us to the other parts of hip hop culture that was out there in certain demographics, certain cities were privy to, but a lot of us still was not aware of. Now, Prince, being in the entertainment industry and being a musician, I'm sure he had access to stuff that, like, I didn't have in 1988. So he probably was more than aware of all these, you know, hip hop acts that were doing the quote unquote reality rap or gangster rap that was just starting to become super popular. And to your point, like, selling like big units too. Like, they weren't just underground, you know, kind of niche artists. These were very successful. They were selling big records, selling out tours pretty soon for sure. I don't remember when that first NWA tour happened, but certainly you had Def Jam was doing their tours and they were having a lot of success there. So Prince is seeing this, I'm sure, and he's realizing yeah, my Lovesexy album didn't do all that great, but you look at all these rap artists right now that are what the kids are into,
right?
So to speak.
And this is what they're rapping about. And
this is exactly what they're rapping about. They're rapping about, the stuff that's happening in their lives and happening in their communities and the street reporters type stuff. And while Prince was very far removed from that by 1988, he wasn't living that life. He still had something. I think he felt like he still had something to say about it, and he was pushing, positive vibes. He's always been pushing positivity as a rule, with the exception of a couple songs off the Black Album, but certainly positivity as it pertains to making good choices in your life, choosing positive ways to express yourself, and ideally, hey, choose God too while you're at it. Choose the spiritual path. And he doesn't really get super explicit about spirituality in this song, except for unless you interpret Glam Slam as a metaphor for that, then it is. But he leaves it vague enough. You can just be all right, well, he's telling me I need to escape. Whether or not that means a physical escape or a mental escape. Is it just, again, a way of just a coping mechanism, I guess? This is the life that you are. This is the scenario you're in your life. How can you either get out of it or learn to live with it, live in your environment, but do it make a positive change, try to do things more positively instead of just succumbing to it.
Oh yeah, that's it. That's 10 years before the Matrix, really. I mean, the free your mind from this rat race.
Yeah.
Because it's, what was going on, it was a conditioning in one way or the other. And I think of course the obvious one again is back to the drugs. That's a type of a conditioning. It's a type of programming.
Yeah. Agreed. At this point then we get, after the chorus again, we get a little bit of a breakdown. You hear voices saying "party baby," and they repeat that several times. "Party baby, party baby." And then in the background you hear someone, not sure who, might be Sheila, might be Bonnie, hear them say, "Where did I hear that before?" And then you get more Glam Slam escape. But then you hear, I believe it's at this point, Prince is back on the mic. "Everybody tripping on the party bass. However high you get is a matter of taste. Winner takes all in the hardest race." And then you get the "don't get on the scale if you ain't got the weight. It's more hard to love than it is to hate." And he repeats that. Say, "More hard to love than it is to hate." Come on.
Yeah, there you go.
I mean, it's fun to sing along, chant along, however you want to describe it. The one thing that I wanted to bring up with the kind of hidden line, "Where did I hear that before?" Mm-hmm. I was just thinking about what are they talking about? But this is the time in the song that you actually hear a little bit of Glam Slam music. You have that din-do-do, din-do-do.
Okay.
And I'm wondering if that's what they're referring to. It's a kind of a meta joke. Where did I hear that before? Oh yeah, flip the A side. That's where you heard that before. I don't know. Just a thought. I have no idea what they're referring to there.
Yeah, I don't either. The crowd noise in that one, it isn't easy to decipher. Unlike the repeated crowd noise that was used in Joy and Repetition, that was used at the end of I Know. I think it's turned up in a bunch of other Prince tracks.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. It's been done on a few Prince songs for sure.
Yeah. I thought it was in relationship to some of that, but I couldn't hear some of the other crowd noises in it. But yeah, you're right. If it comes in at the part, I guess that's the synth line or the horn line from Glam Slam.
Yeah, exactly. So again, I don't think it has a lot of like deeper meaning or anything. It's just one of those situations where nowadays we have the lyrics in front of us, so you can read along as you're listening to the song, where in the past I would have listened to Escape and I wouldn't have paid that line any attention. I'm just waiting for him to get to the it's more hard to love than it is to hate chant. So I wouldn't have, like I said, paid any attention to where did I hear that before. But now that I know that it's being said because it's right there in front of me on the screen and I can hear it, now I'll think of it every time I hear the song from now on. So, however higher you get is a matter of taste. So that line's kind of interesting to me. Do you think it's another? I mean, obviously high, as a reference to drugs, because he's been bringing up, alluding to drugs either explicitly or, just the reference to 15 minutes ain't long enough, and then he mentions crack. And then also the don't get on the scale if you ain't got the weight. So that line and however high you get is a matter of taste seem to just be more pushing that general theme of drug use and trying to avoid that. Is that what you kind of get from it as well, or do you get something different?
Yeah, I guess the downside of it being almost a throwaway track is that he's trying to finish up the song with it, and as clever as those lines are, they're not as clear to the meaning. But I mean, I guess it's a allegory for something, or a metaphor for something. But I don't know. However, how you get, see, again, he could be talking about drugs. He could be talking about musical taste. And be like, well, okay, cool. You can enjoy the hip hop, I guess, but when it comes to the negativity, don't buy into it.
Yeah, could be.
Like I said, don't get on the scale if you ain't got the weight.
Yeah, I think that one has like a couple different meanings. I think could be applied there.
I'm trying to remember how like I said, because I haven't really listened to it since '88. I just thought like, okay, it's Prince. He's being clever.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm overthinking it. I'm sure overthinking it because I immediately thought like, because he's been referencing drugs like throughout the song, and so then to throw in a line about a scale, I just immediately started thinking weighing up drugs for sale, and also the weight, using the term weight can also seem to have like multiple meanings, because you got the meaning about selling drugs, selling weight, and then also can be importance and values. So don't get on the scale if you ain't got the weight, I think is a clever, probably one of the more clever lines in the song, actually, in terms of its multiple meanings, being a metaphor, double meaning for, referencing the drugs that he'd already been talking about, versus also if you don't have street cred, or if you don't have, importance in your life, if you don't have value, these are all things that weight can be, or interpretations or definitions of the word weight. It just depends on the context, depends on who's saying it, and what they mean. Weight is one of those words that has a lot of different meanings, depending on its context and who's actually using the word.
Yeah. I wonder what was recorded else was recorded that day or that week. If it's anything that ended up on stronger, that ended up on an album, or if it was more vault tracks. Like I said, to me, it just feels, like I said, it's, it's the pressure of just trying to come up with a B-side. And he had a good idea and just trying to finish it off.
Yeah.
And like I said, which, every artist, that writes their own songs, they have those kind of throwaway things like, okay, I need album filler, or I need a B-side, or I got to have the album finished by next week. So we've got the hits written. So now I need 2 more songs. And, some work better than others. And again, to where it does have that strong beginning. And then to where it kind of gets into these metaphors at the end. Like I said, he could be talking about anything.
Yeah, it's very vague. It is. Yeah. It's very vague. And like the concept, like it's more hard to love than it is to hate. Okay, yeah. I mean, that's for the most part true. I think, but also at times it's not true. Like hate takes a lot of energy, right? To hate something or to hate someone takes a lot of energy out of you. And sometimes it isn't hard to love somebody versus hate them, because hating somebody just exacerbates and just kind of multiplies the amount of negative energy you have inside you to dislike or hate something. And maybe that's what he's trying to say. Like, it's harder on you to hate. But what he says here is it's more hard to love than it is to hate. And I'm wondering if, it's more of a comment on the difficulties of loving one another when you're surrounded by negativities. Like maybe he's just kind of commenting on that. Like when you're in a very negative situation, or, living in a society or a part of the world where you're surrounded by difficult situations, day-to-day life is so hard. It's also hard to then find love in your heart for other people because you're just so stressed out all the time, or just having a difficult time just maintaining your life. And to extend love to one another in these times is difficult. And maybe that's what he's trying to say there. I'm not sure, but it's one interpretation, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a good way to finish out the song. So that's, why he's so great at songwriting. He's one of the best at it. Because even with, like I said, it's a throwaway, but just that line, what you could do with a single line to kind of either take the edge off of something that's heavy, or to just bring it home, to bring the point home with it. So, while we're going, well, what does get on the scale if you ain't got the weight mean? Or what does, mm-hmm. the other bits of it mean? You have where that line says it best. It is more hard to love than it is to hate. And, when you look at, any, disenfranchised community, but one where there is such a level of violence and a lot of senseless violence that's attached to it. And it's still, which is still playing out even more so today, where, you might have a disagreement with somebody, but the easiest thing to do, or the quickest thing to do, is to grab a weapon and just take that person out. And when it's like, no, there's another way, there's a better way, you don't have to do that. It's like, okay, you got beef with that person, just be a better person. Mm-hmm. But then saying that's not an easy thing to say. Yeah.
It's one of those easier said than done type situations, for sure. Yeah.
Right. But in the face of such, kind of senseless violence, then it's, it is a challenge. It is a journey. And to, face yourself to do it is very, it's a challenge. It's hard to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's kind of like my takeaway of this song is it has some really clever and memorable lines that, taken on its own, just like in a bubble, you can apply it in a lot of different ways. So, like, free your mind from this rat race. That's I think a clear, kind of cool takeaway line. You can read that line, understand it, and kind of apply it and figure out what Prince is trying to say, or even if it just means for your own life. Just apply it in your own setting. Don't get on the scale if you ain't got the weight. That's an interesting line. I think it's one of the more clever lines of the song.
Yeah.
And it's more hard to love than it is to hate. While less clever, it's more impactful than don't get on the scale if you ain't got the weight, because it's more hard to love than it is to hate can be clearly understood. So I think like those three lines are big takeaways for me.
Yeah, and I think you might have just hit on something with that, because to go down that dark path, that's a lot of heavy consequences that, come your way when you make that type of a negative choice. And, not only in just the use of drugs or anything negative, if someone's selling too, that's a, there's consequences that come with that lifestyle.
For sure.
Yeah. With a lot of Ice-T's records, I've always noticed how he would point out to where the characters in those songs, they never get a happy ending in that. And that's just to show that, there's consequences for choosing that lifestyle. So I think, Prince in his own way is trying to send that message. So now it makes sense, to where it's like, don't get on that scale if you ain't got the weight, because you make that choice down that dark road, here's one end you got jail, the other end you got death.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, heavy.
Yeah, and
heavy consequences.
Yep.
For sure. All right. Well, that pretty much brings us to the end of the song, Richard. Do you have any additional thoughts on the track? I feel like we kind of covered everything, but want to give you another opportunity just in case.
Yeah, just one last thing about it. Listening to it sound-wise, again, sometimes, Prince will hit on an idea or, a set of chord changes or a set of riffs that kind of inform the next period. But listening to the lyrics, if it was in production in May of 1988, and if he was approached about it before he released this as a B-side, he could have easily retooled this as something for the Batman soundtrack.
Good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Easy to tweak a few things here and there and make it fit.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. You can take out Glam Slam and you can insert, it'd be kind of weird saying Bat Dance, but no, you could, the kind of the chorus or choir that sings Batman in Bat Dance.
Mm-hmm.
You could swap that out.
Yeah, I can hear it in my mind.
Yeah.
As you say it. Yeah.
So if that had happened like 6 to 7, 8 months earlier, I think, it could have been repurposed for that, and it would have been a better fit for that project as opposed to just being a B-side.
Yeah,
and that's it.
Interesting. Food for thought. Alternate reality where Escape is part of the Batman soundtrack.
Yeah.
Or whatever he would end up calling it. All right, very cool. So thanks, Richard, for joining. Where can people find your show and what you're up to? It sounds like you also have music on Bandcamp.
Yes, I do. Just 2 singles, We Funk to the Last Band and Save Yourself. Just a little bit of avant-garde funk. So check it out and support that page. Amari Purple Talk is on the Libsyn network for podcasts, so you can pretty much get it almost anywhere on your favorite podcast platform. Or you can watch on YouTube on the Amari Communications channel.
All right. Well, I'll make sure to put links to all that in the show notes for folks who are interested in hearing what you're up to on either music or podcast front. And again, thanks for joining me on this episode, Richard. Much appreciated.
Jason, thank you. Thanks for having me on again.
This has been the Press Rewind Prince Lyrics Podcast. I've been your host, Jason Brenninger. You can find the show, Press Rewind Pod, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube as well, and also have a Discord for the show. If you like that method of communication, you can find the link to that in the show notes. And episodes can be found on pressrewind.net or at basically any podcast platform that you can think of. I try to get out there and spread my episodes out as much as possible to make them easily available to those who are interested in the show. So thanks to the listeners, thanks to Richard, and until next time, goodbye.
Peace.